Eliza May Dawson pressed her ear to her mother's chest and counted to 60. She counted again. Nothing. No heartbeat. No breath. No whispered prayer. She was 11 years old. She pulled the sheet over her mother's face with hands that shook so hard the fabric slipped twice. Across the room, her 5-year-old sister Josie sat in the corner, clutching a one-eyed rag doll, mouth open, rocking, making no sound. Josie hadn't spoken in 3 days. Their mother was dead. Their father was dead. And the July sun was already cooking the cabin walls. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments. I want to see how far this story reaches. Hit subscribe and follow this one to the very end. You won't forget it. Now let me tell you what happened when a girl carrying her silent sister knocked on a stranger's door in the Texas heat, and a cowboy who'd lost everything made one decision that changed all their lives forever. The coughing had stopped at dawn. That was the thing Eliza couldn't shake. Not the death, the quiet after it. 6 months of coughing, wet, ragged, bloody coughing that shook the cabin walls. And then, nothing. Like someone had blown out a candle. She stood over her mother's body and tried to think, not feel. Think. Because feeling would kill her, and Josie needed her alive. Water. They had none. Food. Gone since Tuesday. Money. Her mother had traded the last coin for laudanum 2 weeks ago, and the laudanum hadn't done a damn thing except make her sleep through the pain. "Josie, we gotta go." Her sister sat in the corner, knees up, button pressed to her mouth. Eyes open, but aimed at something 1,000 miles past the wall. Rocking. Back, forth. Back, forth. "Josie!" Nothing. Eliza crossed the room in 3 steps, knelt down, grabbed her sister's face with both hands. Josie's skin burned under her palms. Not fever. Heat. The cabin was an oven and getting hotter, and there was a dead woman in the bed, and 2 living girls on the floor, and one of them had to make a decision right now. "Listen to me. Mama's gone. She ain't coming back. We got nothing here. No water, no food. Nobody's coming for us. If we stay, we die. Same as her. You understand?" Josie's chin shook. Her eyes focused. Just barely. Just enough. "I need you to walk. That's all. Just walk. Can you do that?" Josie looked past Eliza at the bed, at the shape under the sheet. Her mouth opened, closed. No sound. She nodded. "Good. Hold button. Hold me. Don't let go of either one." Eliza pulled her up, grabbed the flour sack, 2 dresses, a cracked tin cup, the land deed from under the 3rd floorboard, and her mother's journal. She'd packed it that morning, while counting the silence between her mother's last breaths. 9 seconds. 14. 22. Then forever. She didn't look back at the bed. She couldn't afford to. The heat outside hit like a fist. July in West Texas. The sun hadn't even peaked, and the ground was already blistering. Dirt road, loose rock. No shade for miles in any direction. Eliza had spotted smoke that morning from the window. Thin, steady. Chimney smoke. East. Maybe 3 miles. Maybe 5. She couldn't tell. Didn't matter. It was the only direction that meant anything. She took Josie's hand and walked. Josie lasted 20 minutes. Small steps, uneven, dragging, then stumbling. Then stopped cold in the middle of the road, swaying like a stalk of wheat in no wind, her lips white and her face the color of ash under the sunburn. Eliza looked at Josie's feet. The soles had gone from pink to raw to bleeding. She looked at her own. Same. She turned around and knelt. "Climb on." Josie climbed, arms around Eliza's neck, legs around her waist. 40 pounds. Eliza stood, and her knees almost buckled, and her spine screamed, and she started walking. One step. Another. Another. She counted. It was all she could do. Count steps and keep moving. 50. 100. Her arms shook. 200. Her vision blurred. 300. She couldn't feel her feet anymore, which was a mercy, because they were bleeding onto the rocks and leaving a trail behind her like a wounded animal. She made bargains with herself. Get to that rock. She got there. Get to that dead mesquite. She got there. Get to where the road bends. She got there. Josie's face pressed into her shoulder, hot breath on her neck, silent. Even now, even dying of thirst on her sister's back, Josie didn't make a sound. That silence was worse than any scream. "We're close," Eliza lied. She had no idea if they were close. "We're almost there." Her arms gave out at the 1 hour mark, not gradually, all at once, like ropes cut. Josie slid down her back, and Eliza caught her before she hit the ground, and they both went to their knees in the dirt. Eliza looked up. A house, low-roofed, solid. A barn with a corral. 3 horses standing in the shade, tails flicking flies. A water trough. A black dog on the porch. She almost laughed. Almost. The kind of laugh that lives next door to a sob. "Josie, look!" Josie's head turned. She saw it. Her hand tightened on Eliza's dress. "Somebody lives there. Come on, last bit. Walk with me." Eliza got up, pulled Josie up. They held hands and crossed the last stretch, 50 yards that felt like 50 miles, and they were 10 feet from the porch steps when the front door opened. He filled the doorway. Tall, lean but broad through the shoulders. The kind of build that comes from years of work, not vanity. Dark hair past his collar. Jaw like it had been set in concrete and never loosened. Eyes that swept over them the way a man reads a landscape. Fast, thorough, missing nothing. His right hand had a scar. Rope burn. White and thick, running from palm to wrist. His gaze went from Eliza to Josie, to the flour sack, to their feet, to the blood on the road behind them. He didn't come down the steps, didn't speak, just stood there and looked at them with an expression that wasn't soft, but wasn't hard either. It was something in between, something that recognized what he was seeing because he'd seen it before, in a mirror, on a morning he never talked about. "Please." Eliza's voice cracked and she hated it, hated begging. But pride was a luxury for people who had water, and she didn't. "My sister needs water." His eyes dropped to Josie, to the trembling, to the blisters, to the doll clutched against her chest like the last solid thing in a dissolving world. "Both of you do," he said. Low voice, rough, like gravel dragged over wood. "Come inside." He held the door open. Eliza didn't move. "I ain't going to hurt you," he said. "But that little one's about 10 minutes from dropping. You want to argue on my porch, or you want to save her?" Eliza walked through the door. Cool air. Dim light. A kitchen. Table. 4 chairs, 1 worn, 3 untouched. Stove. Coffee pot. A shelf with supplies arranged with the rigid precision of a man who had nothing to do but keep things in order. He pulled a chair out. Eliza guided Josie into it. Josie sat like something boneless. He filled a tin cup from a pitcher, set it in front of Josie. Slow. Josie grabbed it with both hands and drank fast. Water streamed down her chin, soaked button, splashed her dress. "Josie, slow. Let her drink." His voice cut through. "She's half gone. Give her what she needs." He refilled the cup before Josie finished, filled another, and set it in front of Eliza. She drank, watching him over the rim. He moved to the counter, Bread. Thick slices, real bread. Dried beef on a plate. Set it between them. Eat. Josie tore into the bread with both hands. Not eating. Feeding. The mechanical, desperate intake of a body that had been running on nothing for days. Eliza forced herself slow. Her stomach cramped so hard she doubled forward, but she kept eating, steady, watching him. He leaned against the counter, arms crossed, silent, watching them the way a man watches a fire he's just lit, making sure it catches. When the plate was half gone, "Where's your folks?" Eliza set down the bread. "Dead. Both." "How?" "Papa fell down our water well last winter. Rope snapped. Rotten timber. 40 feet. Something crossed his face. Gone fast. "Your mama?" "Consumption. Dust got in her lungs. 3 months coughing, and this morning, she just stopped." "This morning?" "Yes, sir." "And you walked here, carrying her?" 5 miles, I think." "Closer to 6. He uncrossed his arms. "Kin?" "Papa's brother. Somewhere out of Kansas. Never met him. Don't know if he's alive." "Your mama never reached out to him?" Eliza's jaw set. "Mama said he wasn't a good man. That's all she said. That's all I needed." "Neighbors?" "Stopped coming when the coughing started. People get real busy when dying shows up next door." Quiet. The clock ticked. The dog had come in and settled under the table, his chin on Josie's bare foot like he'd been assigned to her. Caleb. He hadn't given his name yet, but Eliza could see it later, carved into the leather strap on his gun belt. Looked at Josie. "She don't talk?" "Not for 3 days. She used to talk enough for 6 people. Then Mama stopped knowing who she was. Called her the wrong name. Josie went quiet and hasn't come back." He looked at Josie for a long time. Not with pity, with recognition. The look of a man seeing his own wound on someone else's body. "What's her doll's name?" Eliza blinked. "Button?" He nodded. Not at Eliza, at Josie. "Button looks like she's been through hell and back." Josie stared at him. "Tough, though," he said. "I can see that. Takes one to know one." Josie held Button out. An inch, not giving, showing, the way a soldier shows a scar to someone who's got one too. He uncrossed his arms, stepped forward, slow, knelt down so his face was level with hers, looked at Button with the gravity of a man examining something that mattered. "Pleased to meet you, Button." Josie pulled the doll back, but something in her shoulders loosened. "I'm Caleb Harding," he said to Eliza, standing. "Eliza May Dawson. This is Josie." He looked at them. 2 wrecked girls at his table. Sunburned, starving, bleeding. Orphaned 6 hours ago. Sitting in his kitchen like wreckage washed up from a storm he hadn't seen coming. "Can we stay tonight?" Eliza said. "Just tonight. We'll be gone first light." Caleb looked past her, down the hall, toward a door she couldn't see. His hand found the back of the empty chair, the unworn one, and gripped it until his knuckles went white. "You can stay." "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet." He walked them down the hall, opened the last door. Eliza stepped in and stopped breathing. Small room. Blue quilt, faded. A wooden trunk. A pair of boots on top. Tiny, barely bigger than Eliza's fist. A carved wooden horse on a shelf, worn smooth from a small hand holding it. And on the doorframe, pencil marks. 5 of them. Dates in a steady hand. Eli, 5 months. Eli, 1 year. Eli, 18 months. Eli, 2 years. Eli, age 3. No, age 4. Eliza turned. Caleb stood in the doorway, one hand on the frame, knuckles bone white. His face had gone blank, emptied, like a house with the lights turned off. This was your boy's room. Get some rest. He pulled the door shut. Eliza stood still, his boots down the hall. A stop. Silence. 10 seconds. 15. Then walking again. Josie was already on the bed. She'd found the little boots, turned them over in her hands, ran her thumb across the leather where a boy's foot had worn it soft. "Put those back, Josie." Josie looked at her. "Set them down, exactly where they'd been, toes forward, like he was coming back." She pulled the quilt up, put Button on the pillow, looked at Eliza with eyes that said everything her mouth wouldn't. "He lost his boy, like we lost Mama, like we lost Papa." "Yeah," Eliza said, "like us." Josie closed her eyes. Eliza lay down beside her, pulled her close. Josie's hair smelled like dust and sweat and the last ghost of lavender soap. Almost gone. In a week, nothing would be left of their mother but words in a journal and a promise whispered in the dark. Find someone kind. Eliza stared at the pencil marks. Eli. A whole life in inches on wood. Stopped. She thought about the man in the hallway who hadn't painted over those marks and knew he never would. Same reason she still carried her father's cracked coffee cup. Erasing proof someone existed was worse than the hurt of remembering. Somewhere past midnight, Josie thrashed. Violent, silent, mouth open in a scream that made no sound. Eliza grabbed her, held her down, pressed her lips to her sister's hair. I'm here. I ain't going nowhere." Josie went rigid, then limp, breathing fast. A floorboard creaked in the hall. Someone outside the door, standing, listening. The floorboard creaked again. Footsteps moved away. Caleb Harding, checking. Middle of the night, without being asked. Eliza pressed her face into Josie's hair and cried. She hadn't cried when her mother died. She hadn't cried on the road. She hadn't cried when her arms gave out and she dropped to her knees with Josie sliding off her back. She'd held it all behind a dam, because if the dam broke, she'd stop. And if she stopped, Josie died. But now, in this dead boy's bed, in this quiet man's house, with a stranger guarding the hallway and a dog guarding her sister's feet, the dam broke. She cried until she was hollow. Then she slept. Morning hit with coffee smell and the sound of something frying. Eliza's eyes opened. Josie's side was empty. She was up and moving before she was awake, down the hall, around the corner, heart hammering. Josie sat at the kitchen table. Caleb stood at the stove. Pan of eggs, 3 plates set out. And on Josie's feet, the little boots. Too small, toes pressing the leather. But she wore them like crowns. Caleb saw Eliza looking. Found her in his room this morning, trying them on. He didn't look up from the pan. Told her she could borrow them. Josie looked down at the boots, up at Eliza. And her face did something it hadn't done in days. It almost smiled. Not quite. The shadow of one. The memory. Eliza sat. Caleb set down plates. Eggs, bread, preserves that tasted like summer used to taste before summer meant survival. They ate. Josie ate carefully this time. Slowly. Learning again what it meant to not be desperate. Halfway through, she picked up a piece of bread, tore it in half, and set one half on the empty fourth chair. Caleb's fork stopped. "What's that for?" Josie looked at the chair, at Caleb, at Button. "For Eli," Eliza said quietly. "She's setting a place for him." Caleb stared at the bread on the empty chair, his fork lowered to the plate. His hand went to the table edge, and every tendon in his forearm pulled tight. He didn't move for a long time. Then he reached across, took the bread, set it on Josie's plate. "Eli'd want you to have it," he said. His voice didn't sound like his voice. He was that kind of boy. Josie looked at the bread. She ate it. After breakfast, Eliza washed plates. Caleb stood at the window, coffee untouched. "What happens now?" Eliza asked. "I ride to town, talk to some people, see what the law thinks about all this." "Trouble?" "Single man, 2 girls, no kin, no papers, no wife in the house." He turned from the window. "People around here got opinions." "What kind?" "The kind that comes with a judge and a wagon to San Antonio. Orphanage kind." Josie's hand shot out and grabbed Eliza's wrist. Hard. Nails in skin. Eliza covered it with her own. "That ain't happening. Ain't up to us. Not yet." He pulled on boots, gun belt, hat. At the door. "Bread in the box, milk in the cellar. Don't touch the stove. Don't open the door for anybody. Anybody comes, you hide. Back room, quiet. Wait for my voice." "Mr. Harding." He stopped. "Why? Why are you doing any of this? You don't know us." He looked at her, then down the hall, toward the room with the pencil marks, the empty boots, the carved horse. "Because the last time somebody needed me," he said, "I was 2 days late getting home." His hand gripped the doorframe. The scar on his palm went white. "I ain't being late again." He left. Eliza watched him ride east until the dust swallowed him. She turned around. Josie stood beside the high chair in the corner. Small, hand-carved, wildflowers cut into the backrest. Eliza hadn't noticed it before, half hidden behind a flower barrel. Pushed against the wall like something a man couldn't look at, but couldn't throw away. Josie traced the carved flowers, one by one. Her lips moved, no sound. Then she took Button from where she'd left her on the seat that morning, and held the doll against her chest, and walked to the window, and pressed her forehead against the glass, and stared at the road where Caleb had disappeared. Waiting. Eliza opened the journal to page 14. Tea for grief. Chamomile, lemon balm, valerian root. Steep until the water turns gold. A remedy for grief. Her mother had written a cure for the thing that had no cure. She closed the book, held it against her chest. Josie at the window, Button in her arms. Boots on her feet that belonged to a boy who'd never wear them again. A dog at her side that had chosen her without being asked. A man riding toward a town that was about to decide everything. Find someone kind. They'd found him. Now they had to keep him. Caleb had been gone 2 hours when the dust came. Eliza saw it from the window. Not from the east, where Caleb had ridden. From the south. A single rider. Moving steady. Not fast, not slow. The pace of someone who knew where they were going and wasn't in a hurry to get there. "Josie, back room, now!" Josie looked up from the high chair where she'd been sitting on the floor beside it, Button propped in the seat, her lips moving in that silent conversation she'd been having all morning with a boy she'd never met. Eliza grabbed her hand, pulled her down the hall, into Eli's room, closed the door, pressed her back against it. Josie's eyes went huge. She clutched Button to her chest and looked at Eliza with the kind of trust that made Eliza's stomach hurt because she didn't know if she deserved it. Hoofbeats outside, slowing, stopping. The dog barked once, just once, then went quiet. Boots on the porch. A knock. Not hard, not soft. Patient. "Hello, in the house?" A woman's voice, low, steady. The kind of voice that belonged to someone who'd given instructions her whole life and expected them followed. "I know somebody's in there. I can see the curtain moving. I'm not the law, and I'm not trouble. My name is Clara Whitfield. I run the apothecary in town, and I've got a bag of medicine and a reason for being here. So you might as well open the door." Eliza's hand tightened on Josie's. "I talked to Caleb Harding 20 minutes ago on the road. He told me about you. Both of you. He asked me to come." Eliza's breath stopped. Caleb sent her. "He said, 'Don't open the door for anybody,'" the woman said. "And I told him that was fine advice for strangers, but I ain't a stranger. And those girls need looking at by someone who knows what dehydration and heat stroke look like before it kills them. He called me a stubborn woman. I told him he was half right." Silence. "Look, I can stand out here all day. I've got patience the Lord himself would envy, but I've also got willow bark tonic in this bag, and burn salve for those feet your sister's been walking on. And neither one does any good through a closed door." Josie tugged Eliza's hand, looked up at her, pointed at the door with Button's arm. "You want me to open it?" Josie nodded. Once. "Sure." Eliza stared at her sister. 3 days of silence. 3 days of not responding to anything. And now this woman's voice through a door had gotten the first clear response Eliza had seen since their mother died. She opened the bedroom door, walked down the hall, put her hand on the front latch. "How do I know Caleb really sent you?" A pause. Then, "He told me to tell you his dog's name is Patch. Said you'd know because the dog hasn't left your sister's side since you walked in, and he never told you the name." Eliza looked down. The black dog sat at her feet, tail thumping the floor, looking up at her like he was confirming the story. She opened the door. The woman on the porch was maybe 30, maybe 35. Lean, dark hair pulled back so tight it stretched the skin at her temples. Hands that were rough and stained. Not dirt. Chemicals. Medicine hands. She wore a plain dress, no lace, no ribbon, and carried a leather bag that was scarred and beaten and had clearly been opened 10,000 times. She looked at Eliza, and her expression did something fast. Not pity. Assessment. The way a doctor looks at a patient before deciding what to fix first. "Lord," she said quietly, "you're just a child." "I'm 11. I know what 11 looks like, sweetheart. I was 11 once. Didn't have half the iron you've got standing in this doorway like you'd fight me if you had to." "I would, if I had to." "I believe it." Clara held up the bag. "Can I come in?" Eliza stepped aside. Clara walked into the kitchen like she'd been there before, set the bag on the table. Started unpacking without asking permission. Bottles, cloth wraps, a jar of something thick and yellow, a tin of powder. Her hands moved with the efficiency of someone who'd done this 1,000 times and didn't waste motion. Josie appeared in the hallway. She stood there holding Button, watching Clara with those wide, measuring eyes. Clara stopped moving. She looked at Josie, didn't crouch down, didn't make her voice high and sweet the way adults do when they're performing kindness for a child. She just looked at her, straight, level. "You must be Josie." Josie stared. "Caleb told me about you. He said you're quiet right now, and that's all right. I'm loud enough for both of us." Clara pulled out a chair. "Come sit. I need to look at your feet." Josie didn't move. "I'm not going to hurt you. I fix things. That's my whole job. People come to my shop with what's broken, and I make it work again." She set a small bottle on the table. "This is honey and lavender salve for burns and blisters. It smells nice. You want to smell it first?" Josie took one step, then another. She reached the table. Clara uncorked the bottle and held it out. Josie leaned forward and sniffed. Her nose wrinkled. She sniffed again. And then she did something that cracked Eliza's chest wide open. She held Button up to the bottle, so Button could smell it too. Clara didn't blink, didn't laugh. She held the bottle steady and waited until Josie pulled Button back, satisfied. "Button approves?" Josie nodded. "Good. Sit up here and let me see those feet." Josie climbed into the chair. Clara knelt on the floor and took Josie's foot in her hands. Gentle, professional. She turned it, examined the sole, the blisters, the raw spots where skin had torn away. "These are bad," Clara said. Not to Josie, to Eliza. "Second degree in places. How far did she walk?" "Mile, maybe 2. I carried her the rest." Clara looked at Eliza's feet. "Sit down." "I'm fine." "You're not fine. You're standing on feet that look like you walked through a campfire. Sit down." Eliza sat. Clara worked on Josie first, cleaned each foot with water and a cloth that smelled like something sharp and clean. Applied the salve. Wrapped them in strips of cotton. Josie didn't flinch, didn't pull away. She sat perfectly still and watched Clara's hands with the focused attention of a child memorizing something important. "You're a brave one," Clara said, tying off the last wrap. "Braver than most grown men I've treated." Josie held up Button, pointed at Button's foot, where the stitching had come loose and stuffing poked through. Clara looked at the doll, at the loose stitching, at Josie's face. "You want me to fix her too?" Josie nodded, fast. The fastest response Eliza had seen in 3 days. "Bring her here." Josie set Button on the table. Clara reached into her bag, pulled out a sewing kit, the kind she probably used for stitching wounds, threaded a needle, and began repairing the doll's foot with the same steady, careful hands she'd used on Josie. "Who made this doll?" Clara asked. "Our mama," Eliza said. "She made it from flour sack scraps." "She did good work. This stitching on the face is real careful. See how the mouth curves up on one side? That's not accident. That's personality." Eliza's throat closed. She'd never noticed that. The slight upturn on Button's mouth. Her mother had stitched a smile into a rag doll, and she'd never noticed. "Your mama sewed a lot?" "She did everything a lot. Sewed, cooked, grew herbs, made remedies." Eliza touched the journal on the table. She wrote them all down. Clara's hands slowed on the needle. "Remedies? Plant medicine, poultices, teas. She learned from her grandmother." "May I?" Eliza hesitated, then pushed the journal toward her. Clara set down the needle and opened the book. She read the first page, turned to the second, the third. Her eyebrows went up. She turned faster. Page 10, 15, 20. "Your mother knew comfrey and bone set ratios," Clara said. Her voice had changed. "She knew golden seal dosing for infection. This drawing of a plantain leaf poultice. This is exactly how I was taught." Clara looked up. "Where did your mother learn this?" "Her grandmother. Cherokee, mostly. She grew up in the hills before they moved west." Clara closed the journal carefully, held it with both hands. "This book is worth more than the land deed in your flour sack. You know that?" "I know it was worth more to Mama than anything we owned." Clara handed it back, picked up the needle, finished Button's foot, bit the thread clean, and held the doll up. "Good as new. Better, actually. I used silk thread, stronger than cotton. Josie took button, examined the repair, turned the doll over, checked it with a seriousness that said, this was not a game. This was quality control. Then she held Button against her chest and looked at Clara, and she reached out and touched Clara's hand. Just touched it. 2 fingers on the back of Clara's wrist, light as air, brief as a heartbeat. Clara went still. Her eyes met Eliza's across the table, and something passed between them that didn't need words. Clara understood what that touch meant. She understood it the way someone understands language, not the words, but the thing underneath the words. Josie trusted her. 3 days of silence, 3 days of nothing getting through, and this woman with her medicine bag and her steady hands and her refusal to talk down to a 5-year-old had gotten through in 40 minutes. Eliza's eyes burned. She looked away. Clara cleaned up, packed her bag, stood. I need to get back before Caleb comes looking for me and finds me here making myself at home in his kitchen. Will you come back? The question left Eliza's mouth before she could stop it. She heard how it sounded. Needy. Young. She hated it. Clara looked at her. You want me to? Josie wants you to. I asked about you. Eliza's jaw tightened. She wasn't used to people asking about her. She was used to being the one who carried, the one who planned, the one who stayed awake so Josie could sleep. Nobody asked Eliza what she wanted. She didn't have the luxury of wanting. Yeah, she said. I want you to. Clara nodded. Something shifted in her face, not softened, settled, like a decision had been made that she'd been circling for longer than this conversation. Then I'll come back. She was at the door when Eliza spoke again. Miss Whitfield, Caleb's boy, Eli. How did he die? Clara's hand stopped on the latch. She didn't turn around. Fever. Summer fever. 2 years ago. Took him in 3 days. And his wife? Lena. Same fever. Same week. She got it nursing Eli, and it killed her 2 days after he passed. Where was Caleb? Clara turned then. Her face was tight. Driving cattle to Fort Worth. Summer run. Took his best hands and left Lena and the boy at the ranch because it was supposed to be safe. Because nobody expects a fever in July. He said he was 2 days late. He was. By the time he got the telegram and rode back, they were buried. Reverend Oakes had done it. Neighbors had dug the graves. Caleb walked into an empty house and a fresh mound of dirt with 2 crosses, and that was the end of one life and the start of another. He blames himself. Every single day. He sold the cattle, pulled back from everything and everyone. Hasn't been to town more than a dozen times in 2 years. He buys supplies, speaks to nobody, rides home. I'm the only person he'll talk to, and even that took 18 months of me leaving medicine on his porch before he opened the door. You left medicine on his porch? Every Tuesday. Willow bark tea, chamomile tonic. Things for the body when the mind's too stubborn to ask for help. Eliza stared at her. You've been taking care of him. I've been leaving bottles on wood. He's been taking care of himself. Barely. Clara's voice dropped. Until this morning, when I saw him on the road and he actually stopped and actually talked and actually asked me for something for the first time in 2 years. He asked you to come here. He said, there's 2 girls at my place. They lost their mama this morning. The little one won't talk. They need a woman, and I ain't one. Clara's mouth did something that wasn't quite a smile. That's the most words Caleb Harding has said to me at one time since I've known him. She opened the door, stopped again. Eliza, the town's going to find out about you, if they haven't already. Caleb knows it. That's why he's riding in, to get ahead of it. But there's a woman named Harriet Poole, whose husband runs the bank. She sees everything and talks about all of it. If she spotted you on the road yesterday, half the county knows by now. What happens if the county knows? Judge Emmett Hale. He runs the territory. Good man, hard man. Lost his own daughter. She ran off from a bad marriage, and he hasn't heard from her in years. It broke something in him, made him rigid about children, about who keeps them and who doesn't. You think he'll come? I think it's a matter of when, not if. And when he comes? Clara met her eyes. He'll see a single man with 2 girls who aren't his. No wife, no papers, no legal claim. And he'll take you to the orphanage in San Antonio before the sun goes down. Eliza's blood went cold. Josie couldn't hear this. She turned. Josie was in the hallway, holding Button, staring at both of them with eyes that said she'd heard every word. Josie? Josie shook her head. Hard. Fast. She marched across the kitchen, grabbed Eliza's hand with one fist and the leg of the kitchen chair with the other, the chair Caleb sat in every morning, and she held on to both with a grip that said what her mouth wouldn't. I'm not leaving. I'm not. Clara looked at Josie, at her white-knuckled grip on the chair, at Button crushed against her chest, at the borrowed boots on her feet that belonged to a dead boy. Well, Clara said quietly, I guess that settles that. She knelt down, eye level with Josie. I'm going to help. You understand? I don't know how yet, but I'm going to help. That's what I do. I fix things. Josie let go of the chair. She reached up and touched Clara's face, palm flat against Clara's cheek, held it there. Clara's composure cracked. Just a hair. Just enough for Eliza to see the woman underneath the steady hands and the professional calm and the 18 months of leaving bottles on a silent man's porch. A woman who wanted something she'd been denied. A woman who was tired of wanting. Clara covered Josie's hand with her own, held it against her cheek for 3 seconds. Then she stood up, cleared her throat, picked up her bag, and walked to the door with her back very straight. I'll be back before dark. Tell Caleb I looked at your feet, and you'll both live. She paused. And tell him his kitchen needs a woman's touch. The man's been eating out of a can for 2 years, and it shows. The door closed. Eliza stood in the quiet kitchen. Josie still held the chair leg. The dog lay under the table. The high chair sat in the corner with its carved flowers. The journal lay on the table, with its remedies and its warnings. She opened it to the second-to-last page. Her mother's careful writing. The land deed information. The mining claim numbers. And those 4 words, underlined 3 times. Do not let Virgil know. Not Virgil. Leland. Her mother had written Virgil in the original story. Eliza's mother had written Leland. Leland Dawson, her father's brother, the gambler from Kansas, the man her mother never spoke about except once, late at night, whispering, "If he ever comes looking, you run." Eliza closed the journal. She didn't know who Leland was. Not really. She had a name and a warning, and the absolute certainty that her dying mother had used some of her last strength to write those words for a reason. She looked at Josie. You hungry? Josie shook her head. Me neither. They sat at the table together, waiting. Josie in Caleb's chair, Eliza in hers, the empty chairs between them like spaces saved for people who hadn't arrived yet. The clock ticked. The dog sighed and put his head on his paws. And Josie, silent, watchful Josie, reached across the table and opened the journal to a page Eliza hadn't read yet. Page 31. She put her finger on a drawing. A wildflower. Detailed. Beautiful. Her mother had drawn it in careful ink with a note beside it. Eli's flower, grows by creek beds, blooms in July. Good for nothing medicinal, just beautiful. Some things don't need a use to be worth keeping. Eliza stared at the page. Eli's flower. Her mother had named a wildflower after... No, not after Caleb's son. Her mother had never known Caleb's son. Eli was just a name, a coincidence. But Josie didn't know that. Josie saw the name and the flower and the drawing, and she tore the page out of the journal, carefully, so carefully, like she was handling glass. And she carried it down the hall to Eli's room. And she set it on the pillow where a boy used to sleep. A flower for Eli, from a woman who'd never met him, left by a girl who couldn't speak his name, but could honor it. Eliza didn't stop her, didn't say a word, just watched her sister walk back to the kitchen and sit down and fold her hands and wait for the man who'd given them water to come home. The dust came from the east at 4:30. One rider, moving fast. Eliza was at the window. "It's him!" Josie slid off the chair, walked to the door, put her hand on the latch, and waited. Caleb's horse came in hard. He swung down before the animal fully stopped, hit the ground with his boots already moving. His face looked like weather, dark, shifting, something building behind his eyes that hadn't broken yet. He came up the steps, saw Josie standing at the open door, the little boots on her feet, button in her arms, her hand on the latch like she'd been waiting there all day. He stopped. Something moved across his face that Eliza couldn't name, something between breaking and being rebuilt. He knelt down, and he was eye level with Josie, and he said, "I'm back." Josie looked at him. 3 days of silence, 3 days of nothing. She stepped forward and put her arms around his neck. Caleb froze. His hands stayed at his sides. His whole body went rigid. A man who hadn't been touched with gentleness in 2 years, ambushed by a 5-year-old's embrace. Then his hands came up, slowly, one on her back, one cradling the back of her head. And he held her, not tight, not desperate, careful, the way you hold something you're terrified of breaking. Eliza watched from the doorway, her throat sealed shut. When Josie let go, Caleb stood, cleared his throat, adjusted his hat, walked inside like nothing had happened except everything had. "Clara came," Eliza said. "I know. I sent her. She fixed our feet. Fixed Button's foot, too." "Sounds like Clara." "She said the town might already know about us. She said there's a judge." Caleb hung his hat on the hook, unbuckled his gun belt, set it on the shelf. Every motion deliberate, controlled. A man putting his weapons away before he delivered news he didn't want to deliver. "Emmett Hale," Caleb said. "County judge. I went to see him today." "You went to the judge yourself?" "Figured I'd rather meet the fire than wait for it to find me." "What'd he say?" Caleb pulled out his chair, the one Josie had been sitting in. He sat, looked at Eliza across the table with the directness she was learning meant he was about to say something she didn't want to hear. He said, "A single man keeping 2 unrelated girls without legal guardianship papers is a situation he's required to investigate. He said he'd be out within the week to inspect. And he said if he finds the arrangement unfit, he's got the authority to place you in institutional care." "The orphanage." "San Antonio." "How long do we have?" He said a week. His clerk said 3 days. I believe the clerk. Eliza's hands went flat on the table. "What does he need to see to let us stay? What does he need?" "A proper household," Married couple. Woman in the home. Legal documentation. Financial means. We don't have any of that. I know. So, what do we do? Caleb was quiet for a long time. He looked at the high chair in the corner, at the carved flowers, at Button propped in the seat where Josie had left her, at the tiny boots on Josie's feet, and the journal on the table, and the 3 plates still sitting in the basin from breakfast. Clara Whitfield, he said. Eliza's heart kicked. What about her? She applied to adopt a child 2 years ago. Orphan girl from the San Antonio home. 3 years old. Nobody wanted her. They turned Clara down, said a single woman wasn't fit, said a child needed a father. That's what she told you? That's what she told me on the road today. Stopped her horse, looked me in the eye and said, Caleb Harding, I've been leaving medicine on your porch for 18 months, and you've never once said thank you, and I don't care because that's not why I did it. But those 2 girls in your house need more than a man with a guilty conscience and a spare room. They need a family, and I'm tired of the world telling me I'm not enough to be one. Eliza stared at him. She said that? Word for word. I remember because I nearly fell off my horse. What did you say back? Caleb's jaw worked. His eyes dropped to his scarred hand on the table. I said I didn't know how to ask for what I was thinking. And she said? She said, you don't have to ask. I'm offering. The kitchen went dead quiet. The clock ticked. The dog's tail thumped once against the floor. Josie was looking at Caleb, not at Eliza, at Caleb, with an expression that held no confusion at all. She understood. She was 5 years old and silent, and she understood exactly what was happening in this kitchen. You're going to marry her, Eliza said. Caleb's eyes came up, met hers. I'm asking you first. Eliza's breath stopped. Asking me? This is your life, yours and Josie's. I ain't making a decision this big without you saying yes or no. So I'm asking. Nobody had ever asked Eliza permission for anything. Not her father, not her mother, not the doctor who charged $2 and left. Not the neighbors who stopped coming. Nobody in her 11 years had ever looked at her and said, your opinion matters in this decision. She looked at Josie. Josie looked back. Button between them. 3 days of silence. And Josie lifted one hand from the doll and put it flat on the table, palm down, the way you put your hand on a Bible when you're swearing to something true. Then she nodded. Once. Absolute. Eliza turned to Caleb. Yes. Caleb stood, walked to the door, opened it, looked out at the road where the sun was dropping toward the horizon and the dust had settled, and somewhere in town, Clara Whitfield was closing her shop and probably already packing what she'd need. I'll ride tonight, he said. Reverend Oakes will do it. He doesn't ask questions, and he doesn't answer to Hale. Tonight? We might have 3 days. We might have 1. I ain't waiting to find out. He grabbed his hat, his gun belt, stopped. Eliza? Yeah? Your mama, in that journal. She wrote, find someone kind. How'd you know that? Clara told me. She read the journal while she was here. Eliza's eyes burned. Yeah, Mama wrote that. Caleb put his hat on. I hope she meant 2. He walked out into the falling light. Eliza stood at the window and watched him ride until the dust took him again. Josie pressed her forehead against the glass beside her. The dog sat at their feet. 3 plates in the basin, 4 chairs at the table. A high chair in the corner with a rag doll propped in the seat. And somewhere on the road between this ranch and town, 2 people were riding toward each other who'd been alone so long They'd forgotten what it felt like to not be, about to make a choice that would turn everything upside down and right side up at the same time. Josie's hand found Eliza's. Eliza squeezed. They waited. The sun had been down an hour when Eliza heard hooves. 2 sets, moving together. She pulled Josie back from the window and stood in the dark kitchen listening. The dog lifted his head from Josie's feet, ears forward, tail moving slow, not alarmed, recognizing. Boots on the porch, 2 pairs, one heavy, one lighter. The door opened. Caleb came in first. Behind him, Clara Whitfield, carrying a leather bag in one hand and a folded dress over her arm. She'd changed since that afternoon. Her hair was still pulled back tight, but she'd pinned something near her temple. Small, white, a wildflower, half crushed from the ride. Eliza looked at that flower and her chest did something she couldn't explain. Behind Clara, a third figure. Tall, thin, white hair cropped close, a Bible under one arm and hands that held it the way a man holds a tool he's used 10,000 times. Reverend Thomas Oakes. His eyes swept the kitchen, found Eliza, found Josie, and settled with the calm patience of a man who understood exactly what he'd been brought here to do. "Evening," he said. "Reverend?" Caleb pulled a chair out for Clara. She didn't sit. She set the bag on the table and the dress over the back of the chair and looked at the girls. Josie stood in the hallway in Eli's boots, button pressed against her mouth, watching Clara the way she'd watched her that afternoon. Not afraid. Waiting. Clara knelt down, eye level. "Hey, Josie, I told you I'd come back." Josie stepped forward. 1 step. 2. She reached out and touched the wildflower pinned in Clara's hair. Touched it so gentle the petals barely moved. Clara's breath caught. "You like that? I picked it on the way. Grows by the creek bed. Blooms in July." Eliza's hand went to the journal on the table. Page 31. Eli's flower. Grows by creek beds. Blooms in July. The same flower. She didn't say anything. Some things don't need saying. Caleb cleared his throat. "We should start." Oakes nodded. He positioned himself near the fireplace, opened his Bible, then closed it. "I've read these words 100 times. I don't need the book." He looked at Caleb and Clara in turn. "Before we begin, I want to make sure both of you understand what you're walking into. This ain't a performance. A marriage done under pressure is still a marriage. The vows are the same whether you've known each other 10 years or 10 hours. Once I speak the words, and you speak yours, it's done." "We understand," Clara said. Oakes looked at Caleb. "Mr. Harding?" Caleb's hands were at his sides. The scarred one opened and closed once. "I understand. Then I need to ask something that ain't in the ceremony, but matters more than anything in it." Oakes looked between them. "Are you doing this just for the law? Because if you are, I'll still marry you. The Lord doesn't rank reasons, but I want to know what I'm blessing." Clara spoke first. "I'm doing this for those girls. That's the truth. But it ain't the whole truth." She looked at Caleb, not at Oakes, at Caleb. "I've been leaving medicine on this man's porch for 18 months. I told myself it was charity. It wasn't. I told myself it was professional concern. It wasn't that either." Caleb's jaw tightened. "I did it because every Tuesday, when I rode out here and set those bottles on the wood and rode away, I felt less alone. And I know that's a pitiful reason to keep showing up at a man's house uninvited. But it's the honest one." "Clara," Caleb's voice was rough. "You don't have to—" "I'm not finished." Her chin lifted. "I applied to adopt a child 2 years ago. A girl named Rose. 3 years old. Nobody wanted her. I wanted her. They said no. A woman alone wasn't enough. Clara's voice didn't waver, but her hands gripped the edge of the table. I went home and sat in my empty shop and cried for 2 hours, and then I got up and went back to work. Because that's what you do when the world tells you you're not enough. You go back to work. Oakes said nothing, listening. I'm tired of not being enough, Clara said.
I'm tired of going home to empty rooms and eating supper alone and talking to nobody. I'm tired of watching children hurt because the law cares more about rules than people. She looked at Josie. Those girls walked barefoot through July heat with nothing. Their mother's dead. Their father's dead. Nobody on earth wanted them except this man. And he's about to lose them because a judge decided a single man isn't proper. She turned back to Caleb. I'm not marrying you for the law. I'm marrying you because I've been waiting my whole life for a door to open. And tonight, it opened. And I'm walking through it before somebody slams it shut. The kitchen was so quiet, Eliza could hear her own heartbeat. Caleb stared at Clara. His throat moved. His scarred hand opened and closed, and opened again. I haven't touched another person in 2 years, he said. His voice came out low and stripped bare, like he was pulling boards off a wall he'd built around himself and finding the structure underneath shaky. Not a handshake, not a shoulder clap, nothing. I couldn't. Every time I tried, I saw Lena's hand, Eli reaching up for me, and I'd pull back. He looked at Josie. This afternoon, when she put her arms around my neck, that was the first time in 2 years somebody held on to me, and I didn't pull away. Josie pressed button against her chest and watched him with those enormous, silent eyes. I don't know how to be a husband again. I don't know if I'm any good at it. I wasn't good enough the first time. I was 100 miles away selling cattle while my wife and son died in this house. His voice cracked on the word house, and he stopped, breathed. But I can show up, every day, for those girls. For you. I can be here. That's what I've got. Clara reached across and put her hand over his, the scarred one. She didn't avoid the rope burn, didn't flinch from it. She placed her palm directly over the scar and held it. That's enough, she said. Oakes cleared his throat. I believe we're ready. Eliza and Josie stood to the side. Josie's hand found 2 of Eliza's fingers and held on. Caleb and Clara faced each other, close enough to touch, but not touching. 2 people standing on the edge of something neither of them could see the bottom of, choosing to jump anyway. Marriage is a covenant, Oak said, not a contract. A contract says, I'll do this if you do that. A covenant says, I'm with you regardless. Regardless of what comes through that door tomorrow. Regardless of what this town says or thinks or does. Pearl tugged Eliza's hand. Eliza looked down. Josie's lips moved. No sound. But Eliza read them. What's a covenant? A really big promise, Eliza whispered. Caleb, Oak said, do you take Clara Whitfield to be your wife? To stand with her, provide for her, and honor her for all the days that follow this one? Caleb looked at Clara. Eliza watched his face. A door opening that had been nailed shut for 2 years. Not all the way. A crack. But enough for light to get through. I do. Clara, do you take Caleb Harding to be your husband? To stand with him, support him, and build with him whatever life asks you to build? Clara's chin lifted. Her eyes were bright and fierce and terrified and certain all at once. I do. The rings. Clara reached into her pocket. 2 bands. Simple. Gold. She held one out to Caleb, and he took it with fingers that weren't steady. He held Clara's left hand and slid the ring on, his rough hand against her stained one, scars against calluses. 2 people who worked with their hands, finding each other's. Clara took his hand, the burned one. She placed the ring on his finger with a gentleness that made Eliza's throat close up. "By the authority granted to me by the Lord and the territory of Texas," Oakes said, "I pronounce you husband and wife." He paused. "You may kiss if you're so inclined." They looked at each other. The moment stretched. Then Clara stepped forward and kissed him. Quick, firm. Not a lover's kiss. A soldier's kiss. The kind you give someone before you go to war together. Caleb blinked when she pulled back. "All right then." Josie let go of Eliza's hand. She walked across the kitchen, stood between Caleb and Clara, and looked up at both of them. She held Button up so the doll could see too. Then she took Caleb's hand in her left, and Clara's hand in her right, and she stood there, holding them together. A 5-year-old bridge between 2 people who needed one. Oakes watched this. His Bible hung at his side, forgotten. His eyes were wet, but his voice was steady. "I've married a lot of folks, for love, for duty, for land, for spite." That right there is the most honest thing I've ever seen in a wedding. He signed the certificate on the kitchen table. Precise handwriting, date, names, location. His signature with a flourish that spoke of practice. "Keep this safe," he said, handing it to Caleb, "and keep a copy with someone you trust. If Judge Hale challenges the marriage, you'll want proof in more than one place." "I'll hold a copy at my shop," Clara said. "Doc Price can witness it tomorrow." Oakes gathered his things. At the door he stopped, looked at Eliza. "Your mother, when did she pass?" "This morning." "I'm sorry for your loss. Was she a woman of faith?" Eliza thought about her mother's hands folded on her chest, the prayers she whispered when she thought the girls were sleeping. "She tried to be." "That's all any of us do." Oakes put on his hat. "Mr. and Mrs. Harding, I wish you well. Whatever comes tomorrow, remember you built something tonight that's harder to tear down than it looks." He mounted his horse and rode into the dark. The hoofbeats faded. Gone. They stood on the porch, 4 of them now. The night air had cooled from the July heat to something almost bearable. Almost. "It's done," Clara said. "It's done," Caleb said. Josie tugged Clara's hand, pointed inside, pointed at the stove, then at her own stomach. Clara laughed, short, surprised. "You're hungry? After everything that just happened, you're hungry?" Josie nodded, fast, definite. "I can work with that." Clara rolled up her sleeves. "Eliza, show me where he keeps the flour." "You're going to cook? Now?" "Honey, I just married a man I've had 10 real conversations with, in front of a preacher, to save 2 children I met this afternoon, and a judge is coming to inspect my new family in maybe 72 hours. If I don't do something normal with my hands right now, I'm going to fall apart. So yes, I'm going to cook. Right now." Eliza showed her the flour, the salt, the butter Caleb kept in the cellar. Clara moved through the kitchen like she'd always been there, finding things by instinct, opening drawers Caleb probably hadn't opened in months. She mixed dough, rolled it, cut biscuits with a tin cup, and set them in the oven with the confidence of a woman who'd made 1,000 batches and never once turned out a flat one. Josie sat on a chair pulled up to the counter, watching every move. Her eyes tracked Clara's hands the way they'd tracked them that afternoon during the foot wrapping. Memorizing. Learning.
"These'll be tall," Clara said to Josie. "Not flat. Your mama made flat ones, I heard." Josie's head tilted. How did she know that? "Caleb told me, on the road today. He said Eliza told him your mama's biscuits were flat, but you ate them anyway because she tried hard." Josie looked at Eliza, back at Clara. She reached out and touched the dough, poked it once with her finger, left a small dent. Clara didn't swat her hand away. "That one's yours now. You marked it." While the biscuits baked, Caleb sat at the table with the marriage certificate in front of him, reading it like he couldn't quite believe it was real. His finger traced Clara's name. Clara Whitfield Harding. New. Strange. His. "You all right?" Eliza asked him. He looked up. "I got married tonight." "I noticed. I haven't been married in 2 years." "I noticed that too." Something twitched at the corner of his mouth. In another man, on another day, it might have been a smile. "You always this mouthy?" "Mama said I got my tongue from Papa, and my stubbornness from her, and between the two, I'd either run the world or get run out of it." "Smart woman, your mama." "The smartest." Eliza's voice caught. She pushed through it. She'd have liked Clara. Caleb looked toward the stove, where Clara was pulling biscuits from the oven, golden and tall, and filling the kitchen with a smell that made the house feel different. Not just occupied, lived in. "Yeah," he said quietly. "Lena would have too." The biscuits hit the table. Clara set out butter and the last of the peach preserves and 4 plates. 4. Like it was obvious. Like there had always been 4 people in this house and always would be. They ate. Josie bit into a biscuit and her eyes went wide. She looked at Clara, looked at the biscuit, looked at Clara again. Her mouth was full and her cheeks were round, and something happened on her face that Eliza hadn't seen in 3 days. A smile. Small, lopsided, gone almost as fast as it appeared, but real. The first real smile since their mother stopped knowing Josie's name. Clara saw it. Eliza saw Clara see it, and Clara's hand went to her own mouth and pressed hard, like she was holding something in that wanted out. "Good?" Clara asked. Her voice wasn't steady. Josie nodded, took another bite. Bigger. Crumbs everywhere. "There's more where that came from." After they ate, Eliza took Josie to Eli's room, put her to bed, pulled the quilt up. Josie arranged Button on the pillow, then reached under the quilt and pulled out the page she'd torn from the journal that afternoon. The wildflower drawing. Eli's flower. She'd kept it under the pillow. Eliza looked at the page, at the drawing, at her mother's handwriting. "You want to keep that there?" Josie nodded. "Okay." Eliza smoothed the quilt. "Go to sleep." Josie caught her hand, held it. Those eyes, enormous, full of everything her mouth couldn't release. She lifted Eliza's hand and pressed it against her own chest, over her heart. Held it there. "I'm here. I'm still here. I'm not gone like Mama. I'm just quiet." Eliza leaned down and pressed her forehead against Josie's. "I know, baby. I know you're in there. You come back when you're ready. I'll be here." Josie closed her eyes, still holding Eliza's hand against her heart. She fell asleep like that. Eliza stayed until Josie's grip softened. Then she crept out, pulled the door almost shut, and walked to the kitchen. Caleb and Clara sat at the table, not quite touching, not quite apart. 2 coffee cups between them, both full, neither drunk. The marriage certificate lay between them like a third presence. Clara spoke first. "Sleeping?" "Yeah." "Her feet need rewrapping in the morning. I'll show you how." "I learn fast." "I know you do."
Clara looked at her. "Sit down, Eliza. We need to talk about tomorrow." Eliza sat. "Judge Hale is coming," Clara said. "We don't know exactly when, but it'll be soon. And when he gets here, he's going to look at this house and this marriage and these two girls, and he's going to decide if it's real enough to keep." "It is real." "I know it is, but real isn't what matters to a man like Hale. Legal matters, proper matters, looking right matters." "What do we need?" Clara ticked off fingers. "The marriage certificate, a woman in the house. That's done. But he'll want to see stability, clean home, fed children, medical care documented. He'll want to talk to the girls alone, which means you need to be ready to answer questions without me or Caleb in the room." "I can handle questions." "I know you can, but here's what worries me." Clara leaned forward. "Hale lost his daughter. She ran from a bad husband and disappeared with her children. It broke him. Made him hard about custody, about who gets to keep who. He's not cruel, but he's rigid, and rigid men don't bend. They break other people instead." "Sounds like you know him." "I've treated half this town. You learn things about people when you're the one mixing their medicine at 3 in the morning. Hale came to my shop once. Couldn't sleep. Hadn't slept in weeks. I made him valerian tonic, and he sat in my store for an hour and talked about Abigail, his daughter, the one who ran." Clara's voice dropped. "He said he should have stopped her husband, should have intervened. Instead, he respected the law because the law said a husband had rights. And the law let a man beat his daughter, and there wasn't a damn thing Emmett Hale could do about it within the system he served. So he's trying to fix it now, by controlling who keeps children. He's trying to make sure no child ends up in a bad situation. The problem is, he can't tell the difference anymore between a bad situation and an unconventional one." Caleb spoke for the first time. "I'll talk to him." "You'll talk to him when the time is right, not before." "Clara." "I mean it, Caleb. You go at Hale with that jaw clenched and those fists tight, and he'll see a threat, not a father. I need you calm. I need you steady. Can you do that?" Caleb's jaw was, in fact, clenched. His fists were, in fact, tight. He looked at Clara, and she looked back, and something passed between them that was the beginning of how married people communicate. Not words, pressure, temperature, the silent negotiation of two wills learning each other's weight. He unclenched his jaw, opened his hands flat on the table. "I can do that." "Good." Clara stood, carried the cups to the basin, stopped. Her hands gripped the edge of the counter and her head dropped forward. "Clara," Eliza said. "I'm fine." "You're not fine." Clara's shoulders shook once, just once. She breathed in, breathed out, lifted her head. When she turned around, her eyes were red, but her voice was iron. "I'm fine. This morning I woke up alone in a room above my shop and ate cold bread for breakfast and counted my inventory, and that was my life. That was my whole life. And now I'm married to a man I've spoken to maybe 10 real times, and I've got 2 girls sleeping in a dead boy's room, and a judge coming to decide if any of it gets to last." She pressed her hands flat against her apron. "I'm allowed 1 moment. That was it. I'm done." "You're allowed more than one," Eliza said. Clara looked at her. 11 years old, standing in a kitchen that wasn't hers, wearing a dress that was falling apart, with blistered feet and a dead mother and a sister who hadn't spoken in 3 days, telling a grown woman it was okay to feel. "Lord," Clara said softly, "your mother raised something special." "She raised someone who pays attention. That's all." Clara wiped her eyes. Once. Fast. "Go to bed, both of you,
Morning comes early, and we've got work to do. Eliza went, but at the hallway she stopped and turned. Clara? Yeah? The biscuits were tall. Clara's composure cracked again. The good kind of cracking. The kind where light gets in. Go to bed, Eliza. She went, lay down beside Josie, pulled the quilt up, pressed her hand against the journal under her pillow. Her mother's words, her mother's remedies, her mother's warnings. Find someone kind. From the kitchen, the sound of water running, Clara washing dishes. Then Caleb's voice, low. I'll dry. Two people at a sink, married an hour, doing dishes like they'd been doing it their whole lives. The clink of plates, the quiet hush of cloth on wet ceramic. Then Clara's voice. You ever dried a dish in your life before tonight? Doing fine, aren't I? You're holding it like a saddle, gentle. It's not going to run away. I'm gentle. You're about to crack it. I am not about to... A sharp sound. Silence. Then Caleb. I cracked it. Clara laughed, low and real and startled out of her. The way a laugh sounds when it catches someone by surprise after a long time without one. And Caleb made a sound that might have been a laugh too, or the beginning of one, rusty and unused, like a gate that hadn't swung in years. Eliza pressed her face into the pillow and smiled. Josie stirred beside her, rolled over. Her hand found Eliza's in the dark and held it. And Eliza felt her sister's fingers tap against her palm. Not random, deliberate. A pattern. Tap, tap. Tap, tap, tap. Tap, tap. Eliza's breath stopped. Josie had done this before, years ago, when they shared a bed and their mother sang to them. Josie would tap the rhythm of the song on Eliza's palm, her way of singing along before she knew the words. Tap, tap. Tap, tap, tap. Tap, tap. The rhythm of their mother's lullaby. The one about the mockingbird and the diamond ring. Josie was tapping it now. In the dark. In a dead boy's bed. In a house that was becoming theirs. She wasn't speaking, but she was communicating. She was still in there. Eliza tapped back. Same rhythm. Tap, tap. Tap, tap, tap. Tap, tap. Josie's fingers tightened on hers, and she tapped again, faster now, adding something. A new pattern Eliza didn't recognize at first. Then she did. 4 taps, pause. 4 taps, pause. 4 taps, 4. Not 2, not 3. 4. 4 people. Eliza pulled Josie close and held on and didn't let go. Outside, the night settled over the ranch. The dog curled on the porch. The horses stood quiet, and in the kitchen, Caleb Harding and Clara Whitfield Harding finished the dishes together in silence, standing close enough that their shoulders touched. 2 strangers who'd chosen to stop being strangers, in a house that had been too quiet for too long, on a night when everything that mattered began. Clara was gone before sunrise. Eliza found the kitchen empty except for a plate of cold biscuits, a jar of salve with a note. Rewrap Josie's feet. Thin layer, don't skimp. And the faint smell of coffee that someone had made and drunk and cleaned up after, while the rest of the house slept. Caleb came in from outside. He'd already fed the horses, already split wood, already swept the porch. His white shirt was pressed. His jaw was shaved raw. Where's Clara? Town. She left an hour ago. Said she needed to get ahead of things. What things? Doc Price for a medical statement. Her shop clerk to witness the marriage certificate, and she wants to find out exactly when Hale is coming. She told me 3 days. Clara doesn't trust estimates. She trusts facts. Caleb poured coffee. His hand was steady, but the muscle in his jaw was working. Eat something. Get Josie up. Get her looking healthy. She is healthy. She needs to look it. There's a difference when a judge is watching. Eliza got Josie up, washed her face, rewrapped her feet the way Clara's note described. Josie sat patient and still, watching Eliza's hands work, learning, always learning. She put on the better dress from the flour sack, the one Eliza had stitched clothes last night with thread from Clara's sewing kit. Josie stood in Eli's boots and looked at Eliza, not asking permission, stating fact. These are mine now. Yeah, Eliza said. They're yours. They ate breakfast. 3 plates again. Caleb cooked eggs. Josie ate slow and careful, like Clara had taught her, without saying a word. Halfway through, Josie tore a piece of bread and set it on the 4th chair. Caleb looked at it. Didn't move it this time. Let it sit. For Eli, Eliza said. I know who it's for. They finished. Eliza washed, Caleb dried. He didn't crack anything this time. Mid-morning, a buggy appeared from the south. Not Clara. Clara rode a horse. This was a proper buggy, polished, with a matched pair of bays and a driver sitting up straight as a church steeple. Caleb was at the window before Eliza could speak. His whole body changed, not tensed, hardened, the way iron hardens when you quench it. That's Hale. Already? Clara said she didn't trust estimates. Neither does Hale. Caleb's hand went to his jaw. Dropped. He's early on purpose. Wants to catch us unprepared. Are we unprepared? Caleb looked at her. Looked at Josie, sitting at the table in her stitched dress and borrowed boots, with Button in her lap and bread on the empty chair. Looked at the clean kitchen and the washed plates and the marriage certificate in the drawer. No, he said. We're not. Then let him come. Caleb almost smiled. Almost. You sound like Clara. Good. He walked to the door, opened it, stepped onto the porch. Eliza followed. Josie came last, holding Eliza's hand, Button crushed against her chest. The buggy stopped at the fence. 2 men climbed down. Judge Emmett Hale was 60 if he was a day. Tall, rigid, a face that looked like it had been assembled from straight lines and right angles. No curves anywhere, no softness. His suit was black, his hat was black. His boots were polished to a mirror shine, and he walked toward the house with the measured stride of a man who'd already made up his mind about what he'd find. Behind him, a younger man, thin, wire spectacles, a leather case under his arm. He didn't introduce himself. Didn't need to. The case said it all. Forms, papers, the machinery of taking children away. Hale stopped at the bottom of the porch steps. His eyes moved from Caleb to Eliza to Josie. They lingered on Josie, on the boots, on the doll. Mr. Harding, Judge, I'm here to conduct an inspection of the living arrangements of 2 minor children reportedly in your care. I know why you're here. This is Mr. Crawford from Territorial Child Welfare. He'll be documenting the visit. Before you start, Caleb said, there's something you should know. And what would that be? I got married last night. Hale's expression didn't change. Not a muscle, not a flicker. The man had a face built for poker. Married. Reverend Thomas Oakes performed the ceremony, right here in this house. I've got the certificate inside. And who is the bride? I am, Clara's voice came from behind them. Eliza spun. Clara was coming up the road on foot. Not on horseback. On foot. Dusty. Breathing hard. She'd been walking fast. Her medicine bag hung from one shoulder, and she carried a stack of papers under her arm. She came up the porch steps and stood beside Caleb. Close, shoulder to shoulder. The way you stand next to someone when you're telling the world, this is where you belong. "Clara Whitfield," Hale said. "You run the apothecary." "Clara Harding now, and yes, I do." "You married Jesse Harding last night." "Caleb. His name is Caleb." Hale's eyes twitched. The first crack in the stone. "You married Caleb Harding last night, the night before a scheduled inspection." "There was no scheduled inspection when we married. You moved your timeline up, Judge. We didn't move ours." Crawford spoke from behind Hale, his voice thin and precise. "With respect, Mrs. Harding, a hasty marriage arranged to satisfy a legal requirement raises questions about legitimacy. A hasty marriage arranged to protect two orphan girls from being ripped out of the only safe place they've found doesn't need to satisfy anyone except basic human decency." Clara held out the papers. "Marriage certificate, signed by Reverend Oakes, witnessed by myself and the two children present. Also, a medical assessment of both girls conducted by me yesterday, documenting their condition on arrival and their current state of health. And the supply receipt from my shop showing provisions purchased for this household." Hale took the papers, read them, slowly, page by page. His eyes moved in precise horizontal lines, missing nothing. "Reverend Oakes," he said. "He's legitimate?" "He married my first husband and me 7 years ago. He's been performing ceremonies in this territory for 20 years. If you're questioning his authority, I suggest you take it up with him. He lives on the edge of town, and he doesn't scare easy." Hale handed the papers to Crawford. "We'll inspect the home. We'll speak with the children privately." Caleb's jaw locked. "No. Mr. Harding, you're not taking those girls into a room alone." "It's standard procedure." "I don't care what." "Caleb." Clara's hand found his arm. Firm. "It's all right. Let them talk." Caleb looked at Eliza. She met his eyes, nodded once. "I can do this." Hale led them to the sitting room, closed the door. Crawford stayed in the kitchen with Caleb and Clara. Eliza could hear Caleb pacing. 3 steps. Turn. 3 steps. Turn. Hale sat across from them. Up close, Eliza could see the lines in his face, deep grooves worn by years of frowning. But his eyes weren't cruel. They were tired. The kind of tired that comes from looking for something you've given up finding. "Eliza, how old are you?" 11, sir." "And Josie?" 5. "I'm sorry about your mother." "Thank you." "Can you tell me what happened?" Eliza told him. The well collapse, her father, the rope that snapped, her mother's slow decline, consumption, the coughing, the blood, the morning she pressed her ear to her mother's chest and heard silence. Walking barefoot in July with Josie on her back, finding Caleb's ranch. Hale listened without interrupting. When she finished, he sat quiet for a long time. "And Mr. Harding, how has he treated you?" "He gave us water when we were dying. He gave us food when we hadn't eaten in 2 days. He gave us his dead son's room and never made us feel like we didn't belong in it." Hale's hand went to his knee, gripped. "His son's room?" "Eli died of fever 2 years ago. Caleb keeps his boots on the trunk and his height marks on the doorframe. He hasn't painted over them. He hasn't moved them." "And Mrs. Harding? The marriage was very sudden." "Clara came because she heard we needed help. She fixed our feet. She fixed my sister's doll. She made biscuits that weren't flat." Eliza leaned forward. "You want to know if this family is real, Judge? It's 2 days old. But it's more real than anything I've had since my mama got sick.
And I've had plenty of things that were old and looked proper and weren't worth a damn. Hale's eyebrow went up at the language. He didn't correct her. He looked at Josie. "And you, young lady, are you happy here?" Josie stared at him. Button against her chest, Eli's boots on her feet. Silent. "She doesn't talk right now," Eliza said. "She hasn't spoken since—" Josie's hand shot up, touched Eliza's arm. "Stop." Eliza stopped. Josie looked at Judge Hale, looked at him for a long time. Then she climbed off the settee, walked across the room, and stood directly in front of him. She held up Button so he could see, turned the doll around, showed him the repaired foot where Clara had used silk thread, showed him the one good eye, showed him the lopsided mouth that their mother had stitched with a curve on purpose. Then Josie put Button in Hale's lap. Hale looked down at the doll. His hands didn't move. He stared at Button like the rag doll was a document he was trying to read. Josie reached up and took his hand, his right hand, lifted it, placed it on Button, made him hold the doll. Then she stepped back and looked at him with those enormous silent eyes, and waited. Hale held the doll. His fingers tightened on it. His jaw worked. Something behind his face was breaking. Not the official mask, not the authority, but something underneath. Something personal he'd been guarding for years. "She wants you to know Button is safe here," Eliza said quietly. "That's what she's telling you. If Button's safe, Josie's safe. That's how it works." Hale set the doll down carefully on the settee. He stood up, abruptly. "Wait here." He walked out. Eliza heard his boots cross the kitchen, heard the front door open and close, heard nothing for a full minute. Josie looked at Eliza. "Did I do something wrong?" "No, baby. You did everything right." From the kitchen, Clara's voice. "Give him a moment." The front door opened. Hale came back in. His eyes were red at the edges, but his voice was steady. He walked into the kitchen and stopped. Eliza crept to the doorway, watched. Hale stood in the center of the kitchen. He looked at the 4 place settings from breakfast. The coffee cups, Clara's apron on the hook, the marriage certificate on the counter, the high chair in the corner with its carved wildflowers, the bread on the 4th chair that Josie had left for a boy she'd never met. He looked at the bread for a long time. "Mr. Crawford," Hale said, "I've completed my assessment." Crawford opened his leather case. "Your determination?" Hale straightened. "These children are in a stable home. The marriage of Mr. and Mrs. Harding, while recent, is legally binding and provides the female guardianship required by territorial statute." He paused. "I see no grounds for removal." Eliza grabbed the doorframe. Her knees went liquid. Crawford's pen stopped. "Judge, the circumstances." "The circumstances are that 2 orphan girls found shelter with a decent man who fed them and housed them and married a decent woman to make sure they could keep it. If that doesn't meet our standard, then our standard needs changing." Crawford closed his notebook, said nothing. Hale turned to Caleb, extended his hand. "Mr. Harding, I came here expecting to find something wrong. I was wrong. You've done right by these children." Caleb shook it. His grip was firm, but Eliza could see the tremor in his jaw, the cost of holding steady. "Mrs. Harding," Hale turned to Clara, "you've taken on a great deal. I've taken on exactly what I wanted, nothing more." Hale nodded, put on his hat. "I'll file my report today. You won't be troubled again by my office." He paused at the door, turned back. "Mrs. Harding, Miss Whitfield, you applied to adopt a child from the San Antonio home 2 years ago." Clara went still. "I did."
They turned you down. They did. Hale's face did something Eliza would remember for the rest of her life. It broke and rebuilt itself in one breath. That was wrong, he said. For whatever it's worth, from a man who's made his share of mistakes, that was wrong. He walked out. Crawford followed. They mounted the buggy and drove away without looking back. Clara's hand found the counter. She gripped it. Her head dropped forward. Her shoulders shook once. Caleb crossed the kitchen, put his hand on her back, not pulling her close, just there. "It's over," he said. Clara lifted her head, eyes wet, voice steel. "It's not over. It's just—" The dog barked, sharp, loud, the kind of bark that meant something new. Eliza ran to the window. A rider on the east road, coming fast, not from town, from the opposite direction. Dust rising high behind him.
A man on a bay horse, riding like someone who'd been traveling hard and had just found what he was looking for.
Caleb was beside her in a second. He looked out. His face changed. Not the relieved softness from Hale's departure. Something else. Something cold.
"Who is that?"
Clara asked. "I don't know," Caleb said, but his hand moved to the shelf where he kept his gun belt. The rider slowed at the fence, dismounted, looked at the house, at the barn, at the corral, the way a man looks at something he's calculating the value of. He was lean, weathered, maybe 40. A face that might have been handsome once, but had gone sharp. A scar through his left eyebrow, splitting it in two. His clothes were too clean for a ranch hand, and too dusty for a townsman. Travel clothes. He'd come from far. He walked toward the porch, easy stride, confident, the walk of a man who expected doors to open for him. "This the Harding Ranch?" he called out. Caleb stepped onto the porch.
"Who's asking?"
"Name's Leland Dawson." Eliza's blood turned to ice. Clara grabbed her arm.
"Eliza, I heard."
Her voice came from somewhere outside her body.
"I heard."
Leland Dawson, her father's brother. The man from Kansas. The gambler. The one her mother whispered about in the dark. The one written on the second-to-last page of the journal with 4 words underlined 3 times. "Do not let Leland know." And here he was, standing at the fence, smiling at Caleb, with a smile that didn't touch his eyes. "I'm looking for my brother's children," Leland said. "Ruth Ann and— Eliza and Josie Dawson. County clerk in town told me they were here. Real helpful fella. Couldn't stop talking once I explained who I was." Caleb didn't move from the porch. "And who are you, exactly?" "I told you. Leland Dawson. Thomas Dawson's brother. Those girls' uncle." He took a step toward the porch. "Their only living kin. That's close enough." Leland stopped. His eyes moved from Caleb to Clara to the doorway where Eliza stood half-hidden. His smile widened. "There she is. Eliza, you look just like your daddy." Eliza stepped forward. Her hands were shaking. "I know who you are." "Then you know I'm family." "Mama told me about you." "Your mama and I had our differences. That's between grown folks." "She told me if you ever came looking, I should run." Leland's smile dimmed, a fraction, then came back brighter. "Your mama was a sick woman. Consumption does things to the mind. I'm sure she said a lot of things toward the end that—" "She said it before she was sick, when she was clear-headed and strong and looking me dead in the eye. She said you were not a good man. Those were her words. Not a good man." "Eliza, how did you find us?" Leland's jaw tightened, then relaxed, practiced. "I heard about your daddy, heard about your mama. Terrible thing. I came as soon as I could. Papa died 6 months ago.
Where were you? I was in Kansas, working. Working what? Cards? That's what Mama said you worked. Cards and other people's money. Clara stepped onto the porch beside Caleb. Mr. Dawson, these girls are in the legal custody of my husband and me. We were granted guardianship by Judge Emmett Hale after a formal inspection. This morning. I'm aware of the judge. I'm also aware that a blood relative has legal standing to petition for custody. Leland reached into his coat and produced a folded paper. Already filed. Hearing set for 2 weeks from now. The ground shifted under Eliza's feet. Not again. They'd just survived Hale. Not even an hour ago. And now this. On what grounds? Clara's voice could have cut bone. On the grounds that I'm their uncle, their father's own brother, closest living kin. No disrespect to you and your husband, ma'am, but these girls belong with blood. Blood didn't come to the funeral, Eliza said. I explained. Blood didn't come when Mama was coughing up her lungs for 3 months. Blood didn't carry Josie 5 miles in July heat when she couldn't walk. Blood didn't give us water when we were dying. Eliza's voice was shaking, but it held. You didn't do any of those things. You didn't even know Josie doesn't talk. Leland blinked. She doesn't talk? Not for 3 days. Not since Mama stopped knowing her name. You'd know that if you were family. Real family. Leland's expression hardened. The charm slid off his face like water, and underneath it was something colder, something calculating. I'll see you at the hearing, he said. He mounted his horse, turned it toward the road, paused. Oh, and Mrs. Harding, I did some checking in town. Your father-in-law, your husband's previous situation, wife and son, died while he was away. Whole territory knows the story. He tilted his hat. Might be worth asking what kind of man leaves his family alone during fever season. He rode. Caleb's hand had gone white on the porch post. His whole body vibrated with something Eliza recognized. Not anger. Something past anger. The cold, focused fury of a man who'd just been stabbed in his deepest wound by a stranger who knew exactly where to aim. Caleb? Clara's voice was steady. Look at me. He didn't look. Caleb, look at me. He turned his head. His eyes were burning. He wants you angry. He wants you to ride after him and do something stupid so he can tell the judge you're violent. Don't give him that. Caleb's jaw worked. His breathing was ragged. I need you here. The girls need you here. Don't go. His hand loosened on the post. One finger at a time, his breathing slowed. His eyes found Eliza's, and she saw the effort it took, the sheer weight of will required to pull himself back from the edge. He mentioned Lena, Caleb said. He mentioned my son. I know. He used them. I know. And we're going to make him pay for it. In a courtroom, in front of a judge. The legal way. Caleb turned back to the road. Leland was a speck of dust. Then nothing. Why? Eliza said. Why is he really here? Clara looked at her. You know why. The land. Papa's land. What land? Caleb asked. Eliza went inside, got the journal, opened it to the second-to-last page, set it on the table. Caleb and Clara read it together. Thomas Dawson, water rights. Property deed filed with County Land Office. Underground spring confirmed by Railroad Survey. March 1886. Rights passed to surviving children. Do not let Leland know. Underground spring, Clara said. On your father's property. The railroad's been wanting that water since before Papa died. Mama said they offered him money. He said no, said the land was for us. And if Leland gets custody of you and Josie, he controls the land until we're 18, sells the water rights to the railroad, keeps the money, sends us to the orphanage. Caleb's fist hit the table, once, hard enough to rattle the cups. Josie flinched. Clara put her hand on his fist. Stop. He's not a uncle. He's a vulture. I know what he is, and I know how to beat him. Clara's eyes met Eliza's. Your mama wrote this for a reason. She knew he'd come. She left us the weapon. Now we use it. How? Caleb rides to the land office tomorrow, gets a copy of the deed and the railroad survey. I go to Doc Price for a formal statement about the girl's health, and I talk to Harriet Poole. The gossip? The gossip whose husband runs the bank. If Leland's been in town asking about water rights and property values, and I guarantee he has, the banker knows about it. And the banker's wife knows everything the banker knows, plus 40%. Eliza looked at Clara, this woman who'd married a stranger yesterday and fought a judge this morning, and was now planning a legal campaign against a con man from Kansas. Standing in a kitchen that wasn't hers yet, in a marriage that was 12 hours old, building a wall around two girls who'd walked in barefoot and bleeding 24 hours ago. Clara. Yeah? Why are you doing all this? The real reason. Not the loneliness. Not the empty house. The real reason. Clara was quiet for a moment. She looked at Josie, who sat in her chair with Button and her borrowed boots and her enormous, silent eyes. Because 4 years ago I wanted a daughter. The world said no, and I accepted it. Clara's voice dropped. I'm done accepting. Josie slid off her chair, crossed the kitchen, took Clara's hand, held it. Clara looked down at the small fingers wrapped around hers. She knelt, eye level. We're going to be okay, Josie. You hear me? All of us. Josie reached up, both arms around Clara's neck, the same embrace she'd given Caleb yesterday. Full, complete, holding on with the fierce, total grip of a child who decided this person was permanent. Clara closed her eyes. Her arms came around Josie, one hand on her back, one cradling her head, holding her the way you hold something you've been reaching for your whole life and finally caught. Eliza turned to Caleb. He stood by the window, his hands hung at his sides. His eyes were on Clara and Josie, and the expression on his face was something Eliza would carry with her for the rest of her life. Not grief, not joy, not the hardness he wore like armor. Something new. Something that lived in the space between what he'd lost and what he was gaining. A man watching his house fill up again, and being terrified of it, and grateful for it, in equal measure. Caleb, Eliza said. He looked at her. We're going to fight, all of us, and we're going to win. And then we're going to be a family, a real one. The kind that doesn't need a judge's approval or a blood test or a piece of paper to prove it. Caleb's scarred hand came up, rested on top of Eliza's head. Gentle, heavy. The hand of a man who was learning that holding on was harder than letting go, and worth every second of the effort. Yeah, he said. I reckon we are. From the hallway came a small sound. Not a word, not quite. A breath with shape to it. A sound pushed through lips that had been sealed for 3 days. They all turned. Josie stood in the kitchen doorway, Button at her side. Eli's boots on her feet. Her mouth was open, her eyes were fixed on Caleb. And she said it. One word. Barely a whisper. Rough and cracked and broken from disuse, like a door swinging open on rusted hinges.
Stay. Caleb went to his knees. Clara's hand flew to her mouth. Eliza couldn't breathe. Stay, Josie said again. Louder this time. Not a question. A command, given by a 5-year-old girl in borrowed boots, who hadn't spoken in 3 days and chose this word, this moment, this man, to break her silence. Caleb reached out. Josie walked into his arms. He held her against his chest, and his shoulders shook, and he pressed his face into her hair, and the sound he made wasn't crying. It was something deeper. Something that had been locked inside a man for 2 years, breaking free all at once. I'm staying, he said. I ain't going nowhere. Josie's arms tightened around his neck. She turned her head and looked at Clara, then at Eliza. Her eyes were wet but clear, present, back from wherever she'd been hiding. She opened her mouth again. Don't go. 2 words now, the dam cracking wider. Nobody's going, Clara said. She was crying, not hiding it, not wiping it away, just letting it fall. Nobody's going anywhere. Josie pressed her face into Caleb's shoulder. Her body shook with something that wasn't sobs, because she still couldn't make those sounds. But she was shaking with the effort of coming back to the world, of choosing to be in it again, of trusting that the people in this room were worth the risk of loving. Eliza knelt down beside them, put her hand on Josie's back, felt her sister's heart hammering through the thin fabric of her dress. I'm here, Eliza whispered. We're all here. Josie's hand found Eliza's, found Caleb's, found Clara's. 4 hands, connected, in a kitchen that smelled like biscuits and coffee and something that didn't have a name yet, but was starting to feel like the only thing that mattered. Outside, the dust from Leland Dawson's horse had long settled. The road was empty. The afternoon heat pressed down, and somewhere between here and town, a man with a scar through his eyebrow was planning his next move, not knowing that the family he'd come to tear apart had just been welded together by a single word from a 5-year-old girl who'd been silent for 3 days and chose to speak because a cowboy knelt down and she needed him to know. Stay. Josie said 3 more words that week. On Tuesday, she said hungry when Clara asked if she wanted eggs. On Thursday, she said patch when the dog laid his head in her lap. On Saturday morning, she looked at the wildflower drawing she'd placed on Eli's pillow and whispered, pretty, to no one. 3 words in 5 days, each one a small explosion, each one proof that whatever had sealed shut inside her was cracking open, slowly, on its own schedule, in its own way. Clara didn't push. Caleb didn't push. Eliza watched and waited, and every time a word came out of her sister's mouth, she felt something in her own chest loosen a fraction. Like 2 people tied to the same rope. When one found slack, the other could breathe. But there was no slack in anything else. The hearing was Monday. Leland Dawson had been in town for 10 days. Clara had built the case the way she built tinctures, ingredient by ingredient, measured exact, nothing wasted. She'd ridden to town 6 times. Each time she came back with something new. Doc Price's medical statement confirming both girls were healthy and well-nourished. A supply ledger from her shop, documenting every provision she'd purchased for the household. A written testimony from Reverend Oakes, attesting to the legitimacy of the marriage. A character reference from Sarah Chen, the dry goods clerk who'd known Clara for 7 years. And then there was Harriet Poole. Clara had come back from town Friday afternoon with a look on her face Eliza hadn't seen before. Satisfied, not smug. The expression of a woman who'd found the card she needed
at the bottom of the deck. "Harriet's going to testify," Clara said, setting her bag on the table. Caleb looked up from the bridle he was mending. "The gossip? The gossip whose husband turned down Leland Dawson for a line of credit 3 days ago?" "Credit against what?" "Against the water rights. Your girl's water rights. Before the hearing. Before he's been granted custody. He walked into the bank and asked to borrow against an inheritance that doesn't belong to him yet." Caleb's hand stopped on the leather. "He said that? In a bank?" "He said more than that. Harriet's husband told him no. Leland got angry, started talking, called the girls a meal ticket, said once he had custody, he'd sell the water rights to the railroad, and the girls could go to San Antonio for all he cared." "He said meal ticket?" "His exact words. In front of the banker. In front of Harriet, who was in the back office and heard every word." Clara sat down. "Harriet came to my shop this morning, knocked on the door before I'd opened. She said she'd been wrong about us, about you, about this family, and she said she'd say so under oath. Harriet Poole, who told half the county about us the first day. The same Harriet Poole who's now going to tell a judge exactly what Leland Dawson thinks those girls are worth." Caleb leaned back. "That's something. That's everything." Saturday night, Eliza couldn't sleep. She lay beside Josie in Eli's bed and stared at the pencil marks on the door frame and listened to the house settle around her. Caleb's boots on the porch. Clara's voice, low, through the window. Patch sighing under the bed. She got up, crept to the window. Caleb and Clara sat on the porch steps, close together now. Not the careful distance from their first night. Clara's shoulder against Caleb's arm, his hand resting on the step beside hers, their fingers not quite touching. "You ready for Monday?" Clara asked. "No." "Me neither." "That's reassuring. Wasn't meant to be. It was meant to be honest." Clara paused. "Caleb, whatever happens in that room, whatever Leland says about you, about Lena and Eli, about being gone when they died, you hold steady. You hear me? He's going to use it." "Of course he's going to use it. It's the sharpest weapon he's got. A man who left his family and they died while he was away. That's the story he's going to tell." Caleb was quiet for a long time. "It's true, though." "It's a fact. Facts and truth aren't always the same thing. The fact is, you were gone. The truth is, you've spent every day since trying to make up for it. The fact is, Lena and Eli died. The truth is, you didn't let the grief kill you, even when you wanted to." "How do you know I wanted to?" "Because I left medicine on your porch for 18 months, and some weeks you didn't pick it up for 3 days. And I'd stand at the end of your road and watch the bottles sit there and think, is this the week he stops coming out?" Caleb's hand moved, covered hers. "I always came out." "I know. That's how I knew you were still fighting." They sat quiet. Then Caleb said, "Clara." "Yeah?" "I'm glad you didn't stop coming." "I'm glad you kept picking up the bottles." Eliza pulled back from the window. Her eyes burned. She lay down beside Josie and pulled her mother's journal from under the pillow. Held it against her chest. The leather was warm from being close to her body all night. Find someone kind. They'd found 2. Now they had to prove it to a man in a courtroom who only cared about blood and paper. Monday hit like a hammer on an anvil. They rode to town in Clara's buggy, all 4 of them. Josie wore the dress Clara had altered for her. Eliza wore a blue cotton dress Clara had sewn in 2 days. White buttons, the nicest thing she'd owned since before the well collapse. Caleb wore his white shirt and a jacket that Clara had produced from somewhere Eliza didn't ask about.
Clara wore the dark green dress from the wedding night, a wildflower pinned near her temple. Fresh, different from the wedding, but the same kind, July blooms. The hearing room was small, a desk for the judge, 2 tables, chairs along the wall. Judge Hale sat behind the desk. His face was unreadable. Leland Dawson sat at the opposite table with a lawyer Eliza didn't recognize. Hired, from out of town. Leland wore a new suit, hair slicked, boots polished. He looked respectable. That was the whole point. He looked at Eliza and smiled. She didn't smile back. Clara had found them a lawyer, too. Nora Beckley, 28, thin, serious, wire spectacles. She'd arrived from Austin 3 days ago after Clara sent a telegram to a woman who owed her a favor. Nora was the only female attorney in the territory, which meant half the men in the room didn't take her seriously. That was their mistake. Nora stood. Your Honor, we'd like to present evidence that Mr. Dawson's petition for custody is motivated not by concern for these children's welfare, but by financial interest in their father's property. Leland's lawyer objected. Hale overruled it. Nora laid it out, piece by piece. The land deed, the railroad survey confirming the underground spring, the value of water rights in a drought year, Thomas Dawson's will, which Clara had found filed at the county office, leaving everything to his surviving children. And then the journal, the second to last page, Mary Dawson's careful handwriting. The warning underlined 3 times. The children's mother, Nora said, while dying of consumption, used some of her last strength to write a specific warning about the petitioner. She wrote, "Do not let Leland know." She underlined it 3 times. This is not casual notation. This is a dying woman's directive. Leland's lawyer stood. The deceased was suffering from a terminal illness known to cause confusion and paranoia. Her writings cannot be considered reliable testimony. Her writings include 47 medically accurate herbal remedies, 6 pages of financial records accurate to the penny, and a detailed property description that matches the county filing exactly, Nora said. If her mind was unreliable, it was unreliable in remarkably organized fashion. Hale's mouth twitched. Continue. Nora called Harriet Poole. Harriet walked to the witness chair in her best dress, hands folded, back straight. She'd come a long way from the woman who'd spread gossip about the orphan girls staying with the strange Ford Harding man. Mrs. Poole, you were present in your husband's bank when Mr. Dawson came to request credit? I was in the back office. The door was open. I heard everything. What did Mr. Dawson say? He asked for a line of credit secured against the water rights on the Dawson property. My husband explained that Mr. Dawson had no legal claim to those rights. Mr. Dawson became agitated. What did he say when he became agitated? Harriet's jaw tightened. He called the girls a meal ticket. He said once he had custody, he'd sell the water rights, and the girls could go to San Antonio for all he cared. He said he'd done his brother a favor just by showing up. Leland's lawyer was on his feet. Hearsay. The witness is reporting alleged statements. My husband will testify to the same words, Harriet said, looking directly at Leland. Under oath, on a Bible, with his hands steady and his memory clear. Hale nodded. I'll hear Mr. Poole's testimony as well. Continue. Nora called Clara. She testified about her background, her apothecary, the medical care she'd provided, the marriage. When asked why she'd married a man she barely knew to protect children who weren't hers, Clara said, because every child deserves someone who'll fight for them. And because I spent 4 years being told I wasn't enough to be a mother, these girls showed up and proved the world wrong. Leland's lawyer cross-examined, tried to shake her, asked about the sleeping arrangements, the store, her qualifications. My qualifications, Clara said, are that I show up every day when it's hard and uncertain, and there's nothing in it for me.
except the privilege of watching 2 children eat breakfast at my table. If that's not enough for this court, then this court needs better standards. Then Nora called Eliza. Eliza walked to the chair. Her legs felt borrowed. She sat, looked at Caleb. He gave her that nod, the one she'd come to depend on like breath. Nora asked about her mother, the mine, the coughing, the death, the walk, the water, everything. Eliza answered in a voice that didn't waver because she'd practiced with Clara and with Caleb and with Josie, who'd sat in a chair and listened without speaking and tapped her approval on the table when Eliza got it right. When Nora asked her to read the journal entry aloud, Eliza opened the book and read her mother's words. Thomas Dawson, water rights. Property deed filed with County Land Office. Underground spring confirmed by Railroad Survey, March 1886. Rights pass to surviving children. She looked up, looked at Leland. Do not let Leland know. She held the journal up so the room could see. My mama underlined those words 3 times. She was dying. Her hand was shaking so bad the pen skipped. But she held it steady for those 4 words. Because she knew he'd come. Objection. The witness... She's 11 years old, Hale said. I'll allow latitude. Continue. Leland's lawyer cross-examined, tried to shake her story, suggested she'd been coached. Were you told what to say today? I was told to tell the truth. That's what I'm doing. And you believe staying with the Hardings is in your best interest, even though you've known them barely 2 weeks? I believe staying with people who gave me water when I was dying, fed me when I was starving, married each other to keep me safe, and treated my sister's silence like something to be patient with instead of something to fix. Yes, that's in my best interest. Eliza looked at the lawyer until he looked away. My uncle didn't do any of those things. He doesn't know Josie's middle name. He doesn't know my birthday. He doesn't know our mama's maiden name. Her name was Mary Elizabeth Garner. Josie's middle name is June. My birthday is March 14th. And my mama died on July 11th at dawn while I held her hand and counted the seconds between her last breaths. 9, 14, 22. Then forever. The courtroom went silent. My uncle didn't count those seconds. He wasn't there. He's never been there. And he's not here for us now. He's here for water. Hale didn't tell her to step down. He let the silence hang. Then Leland's lawyer called Leland to the stand. Sympathetic narrative. The loving brother. The grieving uncle. The man who traveled from Kansas to claim his family. Nora stood. Mr. Dawson, when was the last time you saw your brother Thomas alive? 12 years ago. And the last time you communicated with him? It's been a while. How long? I don't recall exactly. Did you attend your brother's funeral? I didn't know about it. The well collapse was reported in the county newspaper. Were you aware? I don't read newspapers regularly. But you do read railroad surveys, because you knew about the underground spring on your brother's property. The spring confirmed by the railroad survey filed in March of last year. How did you learn about that, Mr. Dawson? Leland shifted. I heard about it. From whom? I don't recall. You don't recall how you learned about a water source worth thousands of dollars on your dead brother's property, but you recall enough to file a custody petition and request bank credit against rights that don't belong to you? Nora stepped closer. Do you know Josie's middle name? Silence. Do you know Eliza's birthday? Silence. Do you know your brother's wife's maiden name? Leland's mouth opened, closed. Her name was Mary, Eliza said from the gallery. Mary Elizabeth Garner, and she wrote your name in her journal with a warning because she knew exactly what you'd come for. Hale let it stand. No further questions? No further questions, Nora said. Hale called a recess. 20 minutes. Eliza sat between Caleb and Clara on a bench in the hallway. Josie in Caleb's lap, Button against her chest. "Did I do okay?" Eliza asked. "You did everything," Nora said. "Exactly right." Josie tugged Eliza's sleeve. Eliza looked down. Josie's lips moved. No sound. But Eliza read them. Mama would be proud. Eliza's eyes filled. She pressed her forehead against Josie's. Yeah, she would. They filed back in. Hale was already seated. He looked at the papers, at Leland, at the Hardings, at the two girls sitting between them. "I've heard the testimony," Hale said. "I've reviewed the documents. I've considered the law." He folded his hands. "The law gives weight to blood relation. That's a fact. But the law also requires me to consider the best interests of these children. And in this case, the evidence is not close." He looked at Leland. "Mr. Dawson, you have not seen your brother in 12 years. You did not attend his funeral. You did not contact his widow. You did not seek out his children. You appeared in this territory only after learning that the water rights had value. You attempted to borrow against those rights before securing custody, and you referred to your own nieces as a meal ticket." Leland's lawyer started to rise. Hale's hand went up. "I'm not finished." Hale's voice carried the weight of a man who'd spent years failing and was determined to get this one right. "Mr. and Mrs. Harding took in 2 children who had nothing. They fed them, housed them, married each other to create a legal household. They submitted to my inspection. They opened their home to scrutiny. And they built something in 2 weeks that is more genuine than most families I've seen in 20 years of this work." He picked up his gavel. "The petition of Leland Dawson is denied. Full legal guardianship is awarded to Caleb and Clara Harding. The water rights and property held in the names of Eliza and Josie Dawson will be placed in trust, managed by a court-appointed trustee, until each child reaches 18. Mr. Dawson is ordered to leave this territory within 72 hours and is barred from further contact with the children." The gavel came down. Josie's face crumpled. She buried herself in Caleb's chest, and the sound that came out of her wasn't a word. It was bigger than a word. It was a sob. The first sound besides single words she'd made in 10 days. A raw, broken, beautiful sound that meant she was back. All the way back. Caleb held her, both arms, face pressed into her hair, his shoulders shaking with something he'd held inside for 2 years that was finally finding its way out. Clara reached for Eliza's hand. Eliza took it, held it. Leland stood, looked at Eliza across the room. She looked back, didn't flinch, didn't waver. She watched him until he turned away, and she watched him walk out of the courthouse without looking back. The same way he'd walked out of her father's life 12 years ago. Then Eliza turned to Clara and said the words she'd been carrying for 2 weeks. The seed that had been growing roots in her chest since the night Clara made biscuits in a stranger's kitchen and called them tall. "Mama," Clara broke. Not the controlled crack from before. A full break. Her face crumpled, and her arms came around Eliza, and she held on with everything she had. "I'm here," Clara whispered. "I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere." Outside the courthouse, Reverend Oakes was waiting. He shook Caleb's hand, kissed Clara's cheek, knelt down and looked Josie in the eyes. "You were brave today." "I didn't talk," Josie said. A full sentence, 3 words, the most she'd said at once since their mother died. Sometimes brave is just staying in the room. They rode home. Josie fell asleep against Caleb's arm, Button dangling from one hand. Eli's boots on her feet. Eliza sat beside Clara, watching the road unwind ahead of them. The same road she'd walked barefoot 2 weeks ago, with nothing but a flour sack and a dying sister on her back, and her dead mother's words in her ears. When they reached the ranch, Caleb carried Josie inside. Clara started supper. Eliza sat on the porch with a journal and turned to the very last page. She'd never read it. She'd always stopped at the second to last, assumed the last was blank. It wasn't blank. In her mother's shaking handwriting, barely legible, 6 words. "You're going to be okay, baby." Eliza closed the journal, held it against her chest. She looked at the house. The ranch Caleb built for a family he'd lost, and filled with a family he'd found. Eli's room, where 2 girls slept in a dead boy's bed and left flowers on his pillow. The kitchen where Clara made tall biscuits and Caleb cracked dishes, and Josie set bread on empty chairs for people who were gone but not forgotten. Clara appeared in the doorway, drying her hands on her apron. "Supper's almost ready. I'll be right in." "Take your time." Eliza looked at the sky. Wide, gold, open. She thought about her mother, her father, the well that took one and the sickness that took the other. She thought about barefoot miles and burning roads, about a man who gave 2 strangers water because something in him recognized something in them. About a woman who left medicine bottles on a silent man's porch for 18 months because she couldn't stop caring even when caring cost her everything. She thought about Josie, asleep inside, button under her chin, Eli's boots at the foot of the bed. Speaking again. 3 words, 4 words, more every day. Coming back to the world because the world had finally given her a reason to return. She thought about Caleb, who'd said he couldn't be late again, and wasn't. She thought about Clara, who'd said she'd be here, and was. The door opened. Caleb stepped out, stood beside her, looked at the sky. "You all right?" "Yeah." "Really?" "Really." She looked up at him. "Caleb, that carving you've been working on, the one for the mantel." "Haven't finished it." "I know what it should be." "What's that?" 2 pairs of boots, small ones, side by side, and next to them 2 bigger pairs, all 4 together." Caleb looked at her for a long time. Then he nodded. "I can do that." "And underneath, it should say something." "What?" "The Harding family, 1887. His scarred hand came up and rested on top of her head. Gentle, sure. The hand of a man who'd learned that building was harder than losing, and worth every minute of the pain. "I'll start tonight." They went inside. Clara had set the table. 4 places, 4 cups. Josie was awake, sitting in her chair with Button, asking, with words, with her voice, if there were biscuits. "There are always biscuits," Clara said. "Tall ones?" "The tallest." Caleb said grace. He'd never said grace before, not once in the 2 weeks since the girls arrived. But tonight, he bowed his head, and they bowed theirs. For this food, for this family, for second chances that show up barefoot on a dusty road in July. "Amen," Clara said. "Amen," Eliza said. "Amen," Josie said. "Can I have the big biscuit?" They ate. They talked. Josie told a story about Patch stealing Caleb's boot that morning, using more words in one stretch than she'd used in 2 weeks, her voice rusty and thin, but getting stronger with every sentence. Clara laughed. Caleb tried not to laugh, and failed. Eliza watched them and felt something settle inside her chest that had been unsettled since the morning her father went to check the well
and didn't come back. They washed the dishes together, all 4 of them. Caleb washed, Clara rinsed, Eliza dried the big ones, Josie dried the small ones, passing plates in a rhythm that had become as natural as breathing. Later, after Josie was asleep, Eliza crept to the window one last time. Caleb and Clara sat on the porch steps, close. Clara's head against Caleb's shoulder, his arm around her. Not the careful distance of strangers anymore. Something else. Something that had been forged under pressure and come out stronger than either of them expected. Caleb turned his head and pressed his lips against Clara's hair. Clara's hand found his scarred one and held it. Not avoiding the rope burn, not flinching from it, holding it the way you hold something that's been through fire and survived. Eliza pulled back, lay down beside Josie, pressed the journal against her chest one last time. "We found them, Mama," she whispered. "We found the kind ones." Josie stirred, rolled over, threw one arm across Eliza's stomach, mumbled something that sounded like biscuits, and settled back into sleep. Eliza smiled in the dark. 2 weeks ago, she'd pulled a sheet over her mother's face and walked into a world that had nothing left for her. She'd carried her sister down a road that led nowhere. She'd knocked on a stranger's door with nothing but 2 empty stomachs and a promise she didn't know how to keep. And a man who'd lost everything opened that door. And a woman who'd been denied everything walked through it. And together, imperfectly, desperately, with more courage than any of them knew they had, they built something that couldn't be measured in water rights or legal documents or blood. They built a family. Not because they were born into it, not because the law required it, not because the world made it easy. Because 2 barefoot girls needed a home. Because a broken cowboy still had room in his heart. Because a stubborn woman with a medicine bag refused to let fear decide her life. And because sometimes, when everything falls apart, the people who show up to help you put it back together are the people you were always meant to find. The Harding Family, 1887, carved in wood, built on choice, held together by love in all its unexpected, imperfect, unbreakable forms. That was enough. That was more than enough.